Ladies and gentlemen, cryptocurrency is in a bull market, and not only cryptocurrency, but actually traditional markets as well. Really, every single risk asset is in a bull market right now. And that's great, but it's very easy to get caught up in the gains and not develop a long-term plan into how you're going to take profits. Now, one of the ways you're going to be able to develop a long-term plan into how to take profits is understanding when a potential bull market top could be. When could this market top out? Okay, that's the question today. Unfortunately, we do not have a super concise answer like we did in prior cycles because the 4-year cycle has been deviated from to a certain extent. So we do have a few theories here. Luckily, a lot of these theories are very useful regardless, and a lot of them actually come together to form a pretty strong basis for a rough date range estimate of where that top could be. So stick around for that, guys. Before we get into the content, we have a trading and deposit challenge here on the Bitcoin exchange. Go down to the pinned comment and click on the link. It will take you to this page here. This page outlines very clearly that if you deposit 2,000 USDT into your Bitfinex account after signing up with my referral link, you will get 200 USDT in bonus funds for free of charge, $200 US. Okay, literally free money giving away there. All you need to do is go down to the pinned comment, click on this login link here, sign up with my referral link, and make your deposit. I'm literally giving you a link where you can get free money. So I don't know how crazy you'd have to be to not take that. It's up to you though. You don't have to, I guess, but you do you. Anyway, it's down there. So let's get into the content. All right, now I'm going to start with this chart here. I'm going to explain each chart. I've got a few different charts to show you. I'm going to tell you every single chart's end result. Okay, so each of these charts gives a separate kind of prediction as to where the bull market top will be. And then I'm going to overview the data. I'm going to look at where all the predictions kind of point where the top will be. And go from there. So it's going to be an insightful video. Let's get into it straight away. I'm going to try and keep it short and quick. Okay, so first chart is the Bitcoin monthly chart. What you'll notice about this chart is a few important things. There are yellow lines in each cycle that act as bear market resistance zones. You will see right here, bear market resistance zone. We rejected from that level before correcting and going upwards into a parabolic bull market. The same story over here, rejected, corrected, parabolic bull market. Okay. Rejected, but we didn't correct downwards. We just entered a bull market straight away. What you'll notice is that these yellow lines line up with the yellow line I've just shown you here on the RSI at 66 on the RSI. Every time we reject from those price lines in yellow, we're also rejecting from the same adequate and relative level on the RSI. So the yellow line on the RSI is connected to each of these yellow lines in the price chart because every time we've tested the yellow lines in the price chart, we've also tested the yellow lines in the RSI, meaning that yellow RSI line is a very critical level that is actually important to the overall cyclical structure of Bitcoin. What we can notice if we go into this a little bit further is this. We have a trend here, okay? We have a trend here. Basically, the trend is this. We'll remove that red line, it's not relevant. From the time we break above the yellow line, okay, it took 480 days to reach the bull market top in this cycle here. It took 420 days in this cycle here. It took 465 days in this cycle here, which is the last cycle. Now, what you'll notice about this is we have 3 data points. And these data points might not look like they're connected because obviously there's not really much of a pattern or an obvious pattern between 488 days, 426 days, and 365 days. But if you dive into it a little bit deeper, what you'll notice is that each of those numbers are connected. What is 480 minus 60? 480 minus 60 is 420. What is 420 minus 60? 420 minus 60 is 360. What is 360 minus 60? 360 minus 60 is 300. What we could have here is a pattern in which the amount of days it takes to breach this monthly chart yellow line to reach a top is decreasing by 60 days each cycle. If that is the case, in this cycle, it will take 300 days from breaching that yellow line on the RSI to reaching a bull market top, in which case we would reach a bull market top in November this year. I hope that made sense. Note that down. I'm going to come back to it in a second. We're going to move straight on to the next chart. Okay, so one of our charts, one of our predictive methods here says we're going to reach a bull market top in November this year. Bitcoin dominance. Okay, we have a separate formula, separate strategy here to finding where that bull market top will be. What we can notice is that Bitcoin dominance, okay, obviously a chart that measures Bitcoin's strength in relation to altcoins. So when this chart is going downwards massively, it means we're in an altcoin season, which is synonymous with a bull market, generally speaking. And what we can see is that from when this chart really starts to dive to when Bitcoin's top is in. So that was December, late December in this case in 2017, and it was late November in 2021. It took 300 days in this cycle over in 2017, and it took 300 days as well in the 2021 cycle. If it's going to take 300 days again, and assuming that the Bitcoin dominance top is actually in, which is not 100% guaranteed, okay, by the way, but let's just assume that it is, 300 days from that Bitcoin dominance top to the speculated Bitcoin top will take the speculated Bitcoin top at around February next year. Okay, so this chart here, let's recap. This chart here says the top's going to be November this year. This chart here says the top's going to be February next year. Let's move forward further. Okay, what does the 4-year cycle say? Well, the 4-year cycle, and you guys would be well aware by the 4-year cycle by now. If you don't know what the 4-year cycle is, I don't know what kind of rock you've been sleeping on, but essentially it's a date range trend on Bitcoin. There's many micro trends within the larger date range trend, and all of these date range trends point to a top in late next year, so October 2025. The problem with the 4-year cycle is we have deviated quite significantly on a preliminary basis. For example, we've done things like break this yellow line on the monthly chart without correction. We've done things like break all-time highs before the halving. We've never done any of these things before, and so the 4-year cycle, in my opinion, is looking pretty weak right now. If there was a cycle for it to break, I would say this cycle looks like it's the most likely in which that will occur. So I'm going to ignore the 4-year cycle for the time being, but just remember that the 4-year cycle does say the top will be October 2025, and that is valid until it's not. And that's actually quite annoying because it means we're not going to know whether it's invalid or not until the top actually occurs, in which case that will be too late. So let's just ignore the 4-year cycle, but I just wanted to mention it briefly. So but going back to the two charts we just talked about, okay? This chart here says the top is going to be November this year. This chart here, Bitcoin dominance, says the top is going to be February next year. What about the S&P 500, okay? Because believe it or not, SPX, S&P 500, traditional markets in general are connected to Bitcoin. Generally speaking, when traditional markets are going down, Bitcoin is doing the same thing. Generally speaking, when traditional markets are going up, Bitcoin's doing the same thing. That's just the unfortunate truth. Bitcoin is still connected quite heavily to traditional markets. It did have a period of time last year where it deviated quite significantly. You can see deviations on a medium-term basis, but unfortunately on a longer-term scale, they are connected. And so it is very likely that when the S&P 500 finds its bull market top, Bitcoin will do the same. Now, what you'll notice is that in prior cycles, we've got in blue on this screen. I hope you're following this video, by the way. I feel like I'm making it a little bit too complicated. I'll come to conclusions at the end. Don't worry about that. But on this screen right now, stay focused here. The blue line is the S&P 500, okay? And the orange line is interest rates, right? What you'll notice is that when interest rates flatline after being raised and pivots, okay? So the pivot point, when interest rates go from rising to flatlining and then pivoting back downwards, that pivot point, that is what generally triggers a bear market. That is what generally triggers a top, okay? So the pivot point, historically, in the 2001 kind of collapse, the dot-com bubble, the 2000 dot-com bubble, that pivot point when interest rates started decreasing is what led to that bear market. Same thing in 2007. The pivot point when interest rates started decreasing is what led to the global financial crisis, okay? And if we're going to assume that trend is going to remain, we can look at the rate expectations and we can see that as of right now, rates are likely to drop for the first time on November 7th this year, okay? We can see that if rates drop on November 7th this year, around November, it's not really, for sure going to be in November. For example, it took a couple of months extra in global financial crisis. It happened a couple of months early in dot-com bubble. But around that time period, right, we're going to see a pivot and we're probably going to see the S&P 500 go into a downturn. Now, that obviously could change if rate expectations change, which they have been doing. It could be pushed forward or back. But as of right now, it's around that November price region. That is when we're going to see a pivot. And historically speaking, when we see a pivot, we see the market go downwards. Or change directions. And right now, since it's going upwards, that directional change would be go downwards. So I hope that makes sense. Let me recap, all right? We've got a few things to recap here, but ultimately we're going to come to a conclusive point. So, okay, first and foremost, let's just get rid of this 4-year cycle stuff, right? 4-year cycle, again, very, very important chart. It's still valid, but I'm distancing myself from this chart for now. And I'm doing that for a very specific reason. It's not because I don't believe in the 4-year cycle, but it's because of this, like I said before. The 4-year cycle is giving us a date range top at October next year. The problem with the 4-year cycle is that we will not know it is broken until the top is in. And if we are expecting a top in November 2025 and the top actually turns out to be in March, okay, we won't know that March is the top. And we'll be caught holding our bags all the way down into a bear market, and that October top will never come. So the 4-year cycle, although it's still valid, it's still on the table, it's certainly not invalid. The preliminary deviations make it so that if we have half a brain cell, we have to react to data that goes against it and act as though that data is stronger than the 4-year cycle to avoid holding our bags blindly and waiting for an October 2025 top that never comes. Again, the 4-year cycle is invalid, is valid until it's not. And the only way we can find out it is invalid is if we see that top. And if we see that top, by the time we see it and recognize that it actually is the top, okay, and not just a correction, we'll be down in our bags like 50, 60%. So the 4-year cycle is of literally no use to us this cycle. The 4-year cycle literally does not help us at all. It doesn't mean anything to us in the time being. We really need to look at the other evidence. Now, as for the other evidence, we have this chart here telling us the top will be in November 2024. We also have the S&P 500 and the interest rates telling us the top will be, again, in November 2024, subject to change, but still, quite an interesting coincidence. And then we finally have Bitcoin dominance saying the top could be in February 2025. So right now, the alternative data, so the data that is not the 4-year cycle, because the 4-year cycle is still the groundwork for all Bitcoin TA, essentially. But the data that is not the 4-year cycle, we've already established that although the 4-year cycle is still valid, it's in our best interests to look elsewhere for the time being. And the data elsewhere is saying the top could be anywhere between around November this year and February next year. So that's great food for thought. And it's also great for portfolio planning, okay? It blows out of the water all of these unrealistic expectations that Bitcoin could go upwards for for a year and a half from now into October 2025. Is that impossible? No, it's not. But it is worth noting that there is actually a growing amount of evidence that is deviating from 4-year cycle and saying the top could be, again, between November and February, subject to change, but it's interesting and useful nevertheless, right? Fact of the matter is Bitcoin has moved faster than usual, earlier than usual, and it stands to reason with basic logic that if Bitcoin has moved earlier than usual, it could top out earlier than usual, okay? The usual being October 2025, earlier than usual being potentially between November this year and February next year. So we'll see how that data progresses, but I think it's food for thought and it's certainly interesting. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, that I'm going to sell all my bags on the last day of October, this year in preparation for a potential November top. I'm saying that I'm going to look at this data. I'm going to see what the charts look like when we get to November this year. And if the charts look bad, I'll have this evidence saying the top's going to be in soon and I might sell. If the charts still look good, I'm going to throw out this evidence. I'm going to react to evidence that looks more adequate and suits the charts better. So I'm not sitting here saying, you should blindly sell between November this year and February next year. No, obviously you need to react to charts still. You need to use your brain and you need to use TA. But it's just good for the sake of planning. It's good for the sake of grounding expectations. Instead of thinking this bull market's going to last a whole another year and a half, actually, no, let's ground ourselves in reality. It could only last another 6 to 9 months, okay? So I think it's a very useful video for that reason. Guys, I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Again, go ahead and click that pinned comment down below. This link is down there. Free money, free bonuses there. From that link. So go ahead and check it out if you're interested. We've also got the BitGet and BingX exchanges. Both of those exchanges have my referral links down below for 15% trading fee discounts. Those are larger exchanges than Butunix. So if you're interested in those, check them out. We have the VIP group on Telegram. We trade altcoins on the VIP group. We do altcoin trading signals 4 to 5 times a week with a 77.51% win rate over the course of 18 months. Check that out if you're interested, guys. You're also enjoying a exclusive community there. You've got a group chat. We discuss the market, 24/7. Very useful information in the group chat alone, let alone the trading signals. Okay, so check that out. And then finally, we've also got an educational course I made in collaboration with Megael Crypto last year. If you want to learn how to trade, that's where you can do it. We've got a bull market sale for a limited time. So it's your time to take advantage of it right now in time for the bull market, right? So learn how to trade so you can take advantage of the bull market for yourself and take advantage of that bull market sale so you can get a good deal on that education as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you tomorrow. Cheers.